Hello everyone, my name is Jack Walton. I will be joining you today for round 4 coverage of another Tuesday night event. We can see here that on our left we have Tim. He looks like he's on a mulligan to 6, scrying to the bottom here. On our right we have Rune playing Elves. Tim leads on a polluted Delta. Rune quickly fires back with his own fetch land, gets, I'm guessing, basic forest, and leads on Nettle Sentinel. Not exactly what you want to be doing in the Elves deck, but depending on what matchup you're looking at, it can be an alright lead. We have Tim here fetching on the end of Rune's turn, implying maybe Swords to Plowshares. It's a fairly odd time for Brainstorm, so I imagine if he's going for this now, we're probably looking at a Swords to Plowshares on the Nettle Sentinel, maybe making it the ideal lead. Generally you want the elves that produce mana to stay around here. Anything like a Wirewood Symbiote is pretty good, and especially in this matchup. Stoneblade, one of the decks that is capable of beating elves, where a lot of other decks struggle because of this card, Stoneforge Mystic. Now it comes down here, I imagine Tim's going to search out Umezawa's Jide, a play that every player that's cast Stoneforge Mystic is pretty used to. And this deck is very hard for elves to beat. There is going to be a main deck copy of Reclamation Sage, I imagine, but beyond that you're looking at Wirewood Symbiote to attempt to bounce things to get in front of whatever has the Jide, or just picking up the cards. Even cards like Nissa don't play well enough through this that it is just impossible to beat in a value race. Now we see 2 mana here from Rune, probably implying Elvish Mystic on this turn, I imagine. No, 1 mana. Okay, there is Symbiote, so there is a chance that we could play. Now maybe Tim, considering maybe I should have saved the swords. It is a little strange to see him just fire it off there so haphazardly. I know it is pretty tempting when you know your turn 2 is going to be tap out for Stoneforge, but you still have this turn 3 where if you have a land, and it looks like he did have one already, you're going to be looking at 2 mana for the activation of Stoneforge, leaving 1 free to kind of do what you want. Now if Rune does have an elf here, he's going to be sitting alright, and look, there is that Elvish Mystic we talked about. Tim correctly identifying that Force of Will is going to stop the Wirewood Symbiote ability unless Rune has a land and an elf here. It looks... oh, there's the land, but it looks like it's going to be a pass. Tim does what Stoneforge Mystic does, puts the powerful equipment on the table. Looks like he's going to equip here. I like his line, equipping the equipment. It's going to be... as he figures out which mana to tap. Rune correctly identifies double block very quickly. That's something that a lot of people would probably think about for a little while and then eventually come to the realization. Tim just snaps off the Jide counter straight away, giving him a pretty clean answer there, and it's still got 1 charge, so Rune is in a little bit of trouble. Tim preordains 2 to the top, one of them being a land. Kind of interesting. In Tim's seat, you're just looking for any creature. Now, I'm not sure what the card in his hand is. He finds another Wirewood Symbiote here and decides to just run it into the counter. I'm not sure I like this so much. I think you could probably get the counter killed just by fetching up a Dryad Arbor. And the Symbiote, like I said, is a really good way out from underneath the Jide, short of the Reclamation Sage. Now, Tim, it does look like, is playing Ponder here, and Bitter Blossom. Bitter Blossom, pretty good. So those might have been the 2 cards that he kept on top. So the first one was obviously land, and the second one obviously Ponder. But then I'm just not really sure why you would need the land in that situation, unless his last card in hand is Brainstorm. But even then, maybe you're hedging a little bit. I wouldn't mind seeing something like Brainstorm first and to see where you get to, and then you've still got the Ponder available second. That way you can at least look at shuffling away some bad cards and keeping good cards. He does still get the option of course, shuffling away 2 here off the Ponder. We see Rune go for 1 mana for the Nettle Sentinel. The Cradle taps for 2, and then we have 4 mana in pool. 4 mana for a... oh, okay. This... okay, it looks like Tim does have Brainstorm in hand. He's deciding whether to crack the fetch. He knows the 2 cards on top, so if they're no good, you're probably doing this anyway. I don't know whether I like doing it now. I'm not really sure what you're looking for. We know that this is going to get Reclamation Sage, which you obviously don't like here, but I think you need to just let this go and just brainstorm in your next turn, because there's no one card he can he can find here to stop this happening. This is going to happen. Now, as far as what the Reclamation Sage is going to hit, I think is much more interesting. So we know Tim's deck doesn't play the most creatures in the world. Finding something else to equip this Jide to is not trivial. I like how Tim just puts the Jide there. He's like, I am going to equip this. Now, Tim trying to tell him it's Jide, and I think probably it is. Whereas Bitter Blossom is totally a beatable card for elves. It gives slow incremental value, and elves just plays that game pretty damn well. Rude decides to go for the Bitter Blossom. Now, depending on what we actually find here, that looks like a Snapcaster Mage in hand, which is going to be pretty good. Now, something like Nissa could get involved here, which I think we saw in Rune's hand before. Yeah, we do. Okay, so is that a Flusterstorm? Okay, looks like we got him with the main deck Flusterstorm here. Now, if Nissa had resolved there, I think he's still losing to this Snapcaster Mage in hand. Depending what Nissa can get back here. I know there is obviously the Wirewood symbiotes, but if this is Snapcaster Mage, which, yeah, looks like it is here. Yep, and we have a Swords in the bin just to round out a nice even turn. We can Swords away this Elvish Mystic so it can't get in the way. We can use both Jide counts to kill the other two creatures, leaving him with Forest Cradle. If he does draw a creature, then the Snapcaster Mage has to trade in. But look, I mean, the Jide is still going to be on the table at the end of the day. I think there is an argument being made for swordsing the Reclamation Sage. Anyway, Rune just picks him up. But if you swords the Reclamation Sage, it can't come back with the Nissa. But beyond that, look, I think just keeping your Snapcaster around is definitely worth the swords on the Mystic. So Tim picking up a pretty quick game one there. I think no matter what way this game goes, it's going to be quick game one. Because it's either going to be a case of Tim failing to find Umezawa's Jide and getting run over, or it's going to be a case of Tim finding the Jide and managing to stabilize. And Rune, look, he's not going to hang around there and just wait to lose. He's going to just say that he's done. Now, sideboarding wise, if we look at the Elves deck, there's a couple of pretty good ones that get to come in here. So you got Abrupt Decay, obviously, to fight off things like the Stoneforged Mystics and the Jides, as well as some of the other cards like Chokes, I imagine, have to come in here. We see Tim's mana base being almost entirely blue. I imagine there's one Scrubland perhaps in the deck. But yeah, so we see it looks like Rune sideboarding pretty quick. Like I said, he is pretty good with this deck, knows what he's doing in general, and yeah, looks like he's taking out natural orders, just some of the 1-drops and a Craterhoof. What comes in here, we've got, Choke. Oh, were those Deluges? No, Thoughtseizes. Okay, yeah, Thoughtseize also another great one. But Thoughtseize, Chokes, Abrupt Decays. So look, honestly pretty good. On Tim's side, we see him flicking through, takes out Teferi. This is not the matchup for Big Daddy. To be honest, I don't know what is. But yeah, one Teferi seems to be popping up in a lot of these lists. Sure, why not? Why not? If it's good in Standard and Modern, it's got to be good in Legacy. So yeah, taking out things like Teferi, Council's Judgment, if that is in the deck, is another pretty easy takeout. We see him getting those Flusterstorms out of there by the look of it. But yeah, so there is the Council's Judgment. It was in the deck, decides to take it out. I like that. The deck doesn't have the most ways of dealing with Nissa, but I don't think that's the card that the game revolves around. It is a way for elves to catch back up, but once you get ahead, I think it's very hard for the elves to kind of play that game. We see another couple of cards that he took out here, like Jace the Mind Sculptor. Now, as far as what he's bringing in, I imagine he's got cards like Toxic Deluge, Liliana the Last Hope is a good one, general small removal, he might have a Fatal Push or two in the board, things along those lines. And it's just going to make his deck more low to the ground, more sleek, more answers for dealing with Rune's side of the things. Now, game 2 and 3, where I said game 1 is going to be over pretty quickly either way, game 2 and 3 can get a little more hunkered down. We see the Thoughtseizes from Rune. They can definitely slow things down on Tim's side. You can either take away the Stoneforge Mystic or take the equipment it searches up. And we see Abrupt Decay, Reclamation Sage, Thoughtseize, all these grindy cards just in the 7 for Rune here. So this game definitely might be going a little longer, which is why I'm not so sure Tim wanted to take out cards like Jace the Mind Sculptor. The game really, it toggles a little bit here. Now, he has a lot of good ones in the deck. You don't want to be taking out things like Swords to Plowshares, anything like that. But yeah, we see Rune's hand there. It does look pretty solid as far as a grindy matchup, and it looks like we got both players keeping a 7. Tim thinking about it says yes. Rune leads again on that Nettle Sentinel. Tim looks like we have fetch and just cracks it straight away. If it's Swords to Plowshares, I don't think I like firing it off here. And we did see a Fatal Push at the front of Tim's deck there, so it looks like those have definitely come in. But we have Tundra here, so it might be Fatal. It might be Swords to Plowshares. Sorry, no, it's just going to be Preordained. Now, this is a good way to kind of make sure you're hitting your land drops. Now, we saw that second card down was definitely a fetch land there for Tim, and it looks like he just draws Force of Will. Now, if we do see something along the lines of mana producing elves here, just like this, we could see a pretty explosive turn here. If we get something along the lines of Glimpse, I think that's definitely going to be worth the Force of Will. We see Thoughtseize. Okay, Tim just lets it happen, reveals hand of Triple Brainstorm. Bitter Blossom is a card that I would like to take out over the Jace. It puts the Preordain in the hand. Oh, he's saying, yeah, this was my 7? I'm not sure. But it looks like we've got a Thoughtseize here. As much as it sucks, I don't think you're taking Bitter Blossom. Just don't care too much about the card. Baleful Strix, once again, fairly anemic, so it looks like it's going to be Force of Will. It's tough to take one of the Brainstorms there, just because obviously with 3 in hand, but it is Brainstorm. I think it's definitely a consideration. I don't think I'd be taking any of the other cards. We see Wirewood Symbiote. Unfortunately, that's not an elf, so we're not going to be able to keep going. Now, you got a Brainstorm here. I can't imagine Bitter Blossom is winning us this game. And it looks like Tim agrees with me. He's just going to think it through, think about everything that could happen. But I think especially with the Force of Will down there, you just want to be looking for more cards. Find Stoneforge Mystic. Stoneforge Mystic 2, not as good as Stoneforge Mystic 1. But the power of Brainstorm, and just gets rid of the Ponder here. That is interesting. I don't know if I like it. Tim doesn't know if he likes it either. He's going to reconsider here. Oh, no, it's still good. Still good. Oh, maybe it puts him back in the hand. The ultimate punk out. So he put a Brainstorm back? A Brainstorm back here, maybe? Oh, the Strix, I think, might have gone back. Now, I think Strix is better than the second Stoneforge Mystic, I think. And I wouldn't mind just keeping Ponder instead of... But it looks like Tim has other plans. But yeah, I think if this is going to be your play here, you're going to Brainstorm again this turn at sorcery speed, this may as well be a Ponder. Tim obviously finds Swords to Plowshares there, which is nice. It looks like his hand is 2 fetch lands, Swords to Plowshares. I imagine at least one of those Stoneforge Mystics still has to be here, and then the other Brainstorm is probably still going to be here as well. Rune doing it all, but all really looks like not a lot. Now, we saw Rune's hand before of Abrupt Decay, and it looks like he's only holding 2 cards. Can't quite make out what the second one is here. It's clearly not an elf. It could, I guess, be Nissa. I don't think he would have had quite enough mana to make Nissa last turn. But besides that, it just has to be some kind of interaction. Choke obviously would have come down. We see Tim shuffling away and brainstorming. So I think the Ponder last turn, I would have liked it slightly more. But Tim obviously has a lot of options here going into this turn. If he can find something like a Deluge, I imagine with Rune being fairly slow out of the gates here, not finding an Elvish Mystic to really play with that Wirewood Symbiote, a Deluge should actually just sweep this game up. Worth noting, he is on 11. He's facing down 5 points of damage. He does have a Swords in hand, so he'll be able to save himself 2 life if he wants to go that way. But just thinking about this brainstorm, this is really the pivotal turn of the game. Decides to fire off Stoneforge Mystic. Now, the turn 2 and turn 3 Stoneforge Mystic, really not that different. Okay, he goes for Batterskull here. Maybe just respecting something like Abrupt Decay. Now, it is a little awkward because Abrupt Decay can just hit the Stoneforge Mystic if that's what we're playing around. And I think Umezawa's Jide is just better. Rune's showing a lot of restraint, not firing off the Abrupt Decay there. Draws land for turn, attacks in, says before blocks, I'm going to Abrupt Decay. Oh, gets the untap. Okay, that is nice actually. It puts lethal on the table if Tim cracks fetch land here, or just puts him to 1 if he doesn't. We see 2 fetch lands in Tim's hand. It's going to be hard for him to get up to 5 mana to deploy that Batterskull, I think, without... Oh, okay, we see Snapcaster Swords here for Tim. Now, I know he has a Swords in hand, so I think taking the other Swords here, Swordsing 2 things, you are going to have to fetch, but you're only going to be taking 2 then. So you Swords the Symbiote first, so that it can't bounce whatever else you try and Swords, and then you Swords probably the Nettle Sentinel just because it is representing 2 points of damage. You know, whatever is in Rune's deck at this point, he probably would have been able to cast last turn if he wanted to, but we just see Strix instead. Look, this is a roundabout way of getting to the same position, but I think you really want to be casting this Swords to Plowshares at some point here. Now, whether or not it's right to do it in our turn, I think it probably just is. But of note, you'd have to go for the Wirewood Symbiote. It's not the target you want off the battlefield, but it's unfortunately the only one that you can actually get off. Now, we're on 6. Pretty difficult. Oh, he has Reclamation Sage in hand. Oh, so he drew a land, I think, and decided to play this without the land instead. Perhaps getting a little bluff equity here, but okay, still managing to find the lethal attack. Tim fetches down here. He's going to be able to Swords, take out the 2-power creature for a +1 life, Swords to Plowshares, but he's going to be facing down quite a lot. Oh, he chooses not to. Now, oh, he gets Underground Sea. Interesting. Swords cannot be cast from Underground Sea. Excellent. Alright, okay. We picked it up. We know what we're doing here. We're professionals. Opts to go for Scrubland. And now we're probably going to see that Swords to Plowshares on the Nettle Sentinel. So he took 1 from the fetch, takes 4 from the creatures, and goes to 1. Now, unfortunately, it turns off Toxic Deluge as an out. We may indeed be able to go Snapcaster, Swords our own Snapcaster, Toxic Deluge. Tim picks up a card and just picks him up. I'm not so sure about that. I think he definitely had looks at things. I don't know what's in his deck. I guess if there are no Toxic Deluges, I guess it's definitely out of the question, but I guess also being on 1 and only having 3-4 mana that turn is going to be pretty hard to find what we're doing. Now it looks like Tim going back to the drawing board, maybe thinking, oh, he's thinking about the Jace, which, like I said before, I do like, but it is tough to break it in. I think on the play, definitely a lot better for Tim than on the draw. Like we saw in that game, the turn 3 Stoneforge Mystic, which is very similar to the turn 2 Stoneforge Mystic, because you're going to be attacking with the equipment if you go for the Umezawa's Jide. You're going to be attacking with that on turn 4 regardless. You don't have enough mana if you play it on turn 3 to play an equip on... you don't have enough mana on turn 3 if you play an equip on turn 2. But if you play it on 3, you have enough mana to play and equip on 4. But Rude, pretty happy with his 60. Worked out pretty well for him that game. We saw just enough of little dudes into attacks mixed with the rightly timed Abrupt Decays as well as a Reclamation Sage. We see Tim on the play here. Both players looking like they're pretty happy with their 7. Tim, for the 3rd game in a row, leads Fetchland, Crack It, cast a 1-drop. Now this time it is Ponder. I think Ponder's obviously a little better than Preordain. But we're going to have to figure out what Tim's looking for here. I see a couple of lands in hand, and it looks like he picks up land. It looks like, is that Batterskull or was that Jide? Whatever it is, Tim doesn't want it. He's going to be shuffling, peeling a new card here, and Rune is going to have free reign over this first turn. Both times Rune has led on Nettle Sentinel, not any of the 1 mana Llanowar Elf variants. But we're going to see here, he has Green Sun Zenith for 0. So this is probably the deck's strongest start. Dryad Arbor, look, it just kind of does it all. It's another 1 mana producing elf that just kind of does it. Now, it's not actually an elf, so some of the cards that require you to tap certain amount of elves, they're obviously not going to play well with this, but look, we see Rune on the same amount of mana going into turn 2, and that's exactly what you want to be doing with elves. You got 2 turns to kind of set up, and then turn 3 is sort of your window against a deck like this, where you're probably going to have to be fighting through Force of Will, some other kind of counterspells. We see to the front of Tim's hand, I'm not 100% sure, but it looks like a Force of Will. There it is, Force of Will. Elvish Visionary, respect getting the Force of Will 2 games in a row here. Now, I think Rune did this on purpose. Leads on the Visionary without playing a land to say, oh no, I've missed a land drop, please Force of Will my Visionary. But Tim opts not to cast this last turn, which is a little interesting, makes me think he might have drawn it, but goes and gets Jide this time. So I wonder why last game he went and got the Batterskull. It would be interesting to hear his thoughts. Like I said, he could have been trying to play around Abrupt Decay, but with the Jide in hand this time, looks like he's not giving the respect to the card, or at least not willing to play around it. Now we see Elvish Visionary come down here. We have officially assembled the Elvish Visionary Wirewood Symbiote lock against the Jide. Attack into me all you want. I will never ever let you deal damage. We see Cradle here tapping for 3. Oh, we're getting the dice. That looks like 4. Back down to 2 with a Scavenging Ooze. Tim has some choices to make. We see Elvish Visionary gets bounced for Dryad Arbor. Untap, and Elvish Visionary comes back down. 0 green in pool, draws another card. Says go. Can't attack through this 1-2. That's too strong. And Tim's hand, a lot of basics. I know there is a Jide there, and there's one other card which might just be a Force of Will. But it looks like he's going to be pretty forced here to just put a land on the table and pass. Yeah, it looks like that card there, it's at least not going to play right now. We see Rune floating a mana, eating the Ponder. Not sure how much eating the Ponder and Force of Will matter. You don't want to be targeting those with Snapcaster. Although I'm sure if Tim did have a Snapcaster here, he'd probably gladly take that Ponder. And Rune identifying that if you have the opportunity, why not? Taps another 2 mana, Elvish Visionary again. Oh, this one picking up Heritage Druid. Now this, Nettle Sentinel again into 5 mana from the Cradle. And there it is, Heritage Druid. Now we got 4, 7 mana in pool. And looking for a big follow-up here. Not entirely sure what we're looking for. But it's going to be bounce Visionary to untap Heritage Druid, down to 5 mana in pool, untap our Nettle Sentinel to draw a card with the Visionary, tap 3, that looks like 8 to me. Can I see a hoof? How much would hoof be here? We would have 7 creatures, 21, 23. Yep, if hoof is in the deck, this is underpaid for Aven Mindscensor. Alright, that's an Aven Mindscensor. Now we're going to have to put 1 more mana here into the Mindscensor. They appear to miss it, and it is actually going to end up being a big deal here. I know that Tim's hand is only land, so he is going to be able to just play the Jide from hand and equip it, and it won't stop him functioning next turn. And on the Mindscensor, that's actually a pretty big deal. Now, Rune was kind of all in there. That was all his mana. Oh, no it wasn't. No, it wasn't. The yellow dice. Excuse me. So we've got a couple more elves here, making 4 more mana. Oh, thinks twice. Huh. Decides to say go. Tim is going to use this cheaty face mana to attempt to put the Jide into play. Now, like I said, I don't think it was making a big difference this game, simply given the contents of Tim's hand. But look, you always want to be playing correctly. I think, realistically, if you can, always try pay the right amount of mana. Don't be cheating. It is the worst when both players don't catch it, because you don't really know when you do realize what to do about it all. But yeah, we see Tim put the Jide on there. Now look, like I said, it's just going to equate to 2 mana. Should have been paid this turn. Wait, was that a deluge? Okay, look, it might end up making a little bit of a difference then, but probably not. We're probably still just going to see a quip on the Aven Mindscensor and pass it back. I think it would be pretty bold of Tim to deluge away this board, given that Rune can bounce the Visionary back to his hand. Oh, he puts it on the Stoneforge and attacks. This is not what you want to be doing. So Rune makes 3 mana, bounces this, untaps this. I'll eat your land out of your graveyard for good measure, and then I'll look at you in the eyes and say, I bet you wish that creature had flying. Now we see Tim just play the land, pass back. Doesn't equip the Jide over. I'm not sure. If you're planning on blocking, which I don't think you can be with this. Oh dear. Yeah, so this is kind of exactly what Elves is going to do in these sideboard games. You're just going to kind of work through these hate pieces. They're not enough to just end the game. And once you assemble this Elvish Visionary and Wirewood Symbiote, you could really just draw a lot of cards. Now we see an Abrupt Decay as well. So all these cards that just do this, they just trade 1 for 1. Now we see 3 green, 1 black in pool. Kill this. Now see, I think the Aven Mindscensor should have just attacked. Like, is it blocking? No. And if it was going to attack, it should have held the Jide. Now, admittedly, 1 Jide hit is not enough to come back from this. We see a heap of mana pumped into a Green Sun Zenith. Rune moving pretty quick here. He knows this one's about to be over, and I think we're going to see a handshake. Gets his hoof, extends the hand. Oh, it was a Surgical Extraction he drew. And once again, that one coming out of the board, I don't think that's what you want to be doing against Elves. You kind of want cards that impact straight away. Surgical, that's one that you're trying to decrease your opponent's draws. But anyway, Rune takes this one down 2-1, manages to win both sideboard games. Not really surprising against a Stoneforge Mystic deck. Pretty tough game 1, but congratulations to Rune here. Once again, there's been another Legacy Tuesday night commentary. We see Tim going through his sideboard saying, you drew all of these! No wonder I couldn't win. But yeah, both these players clearly 3-0 at this event, so pretty good results for both of them. Rune taking down another 4-0. But yeah, everybody here playing pretty well. I liked it. I think there was a couple of lines where I would have done slightly different, just macro plays. But overall, I think sideboarding wise, I wouldn't have made any drastic changes. We see both players here discussing the Surgical. I mean, similar to what I was saying. Even if you're trying to take, we saw Rune take 1 Craterhoof Behemoth out of the deck, which might just be a nod to him understanding the matchup a little bit better than Tim. The deck is not going to work through a Craterhoof Behemoth ever. You're never looking to do that. Anyway, thanks for watching.